Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Faro here with League Top 10, and today we're going to talk about Swain. Now, I know he's been out for a little bit, and I'm a little late with the video, but you're going to have to forgive me. There's a couple real-life things that just came up. So, the first thing I want to talk about with Swain is his general impression on the community, the way he was received. I'm not a big fan of the way people just immediately shoved him off the bottom tier and just decided to never look back. I actually really like Swain. He's one of my favorite characters right now, just because he's fun to play, and he's actually a lot stronger than people give him credit for. I use Swain anytime the enemy team picks Garen or a melee heavy team, just because he has such good control over melee characters. Now, granted, in League of Legends that's not really saying much because Melee have a horrible, horrible, horrible time already. And, being able to beat up on a Jax or a Yi is nothing impressive. But being able to control someone like Garen the way Swain does is absolutely disgusting. Alright, so Swain seems to have a set role in my mind as a controller, and I guess the question that comes now is, who does he share that role with? Because that's the only real way to compare him. And unfortunately for Swain, he shares that role with people like Ashe, with people like Morgana, with people like tanks, so he kind of runs into a lot of competition in the spellcaster slot. And by a lot of competition, I mean one of the best characters in the game with one of the best support abilities in the game, who also has the ability to carry a game because GG-AP ratios. But if you compare his laning phase to Morgana's, it's actually much, much better, and he's able to shut down a lot of characters using proper zoning and correct use of abilities. What I do with Swain is I go with a full Magic Pen rune page, reds and quints, and then mana regen yellows and blues. Then from there I start out with Laser Chicken, which is Q, and then I put a point in W, then I put a point in Q, then I put a point in E. And it's about this time that I start just completely dominating whoever's in my lane. I stand between the enemy creeps and the other champion, and if they get anywhere near me, I just drop E and Q, and once they're slowed, I hit them with W. If they decide to play the I'm gonna sit back and be a cutie game, then I make sure to try and land a W. Even if the W doesn't land, I'm gonna use it for zoning to keep them away from experience and from last hits. Now, the two characters that give Swain a lot of trouble are Misfortune and Tristana because of their really good ranges and because they have a Mortal Strike debuff, or the 50% healing reduction, I guess is what it's called here. The reason these give him a lot of trouble is because once Swain hits level 6, he gets to basically stay in his lane forever if no one has an Ignite or an MS, because he just hits his ultimate, turns into a crow, heals up, and then just goes back to whatever he was doing. This lets him take infinite harassment from people like Ashe without even batting an eyelash at it. As far as items go, I'm going to go with either a Doran's Shield or a Doran's Ring. It depends on the lane. If I have to 2v1, which, I'm surprised I still have to 2v1, but sometimes people don't jungle, so, it's whatever. 2v1 you go Doran's Shield, 1v1 you go Doran's Ring. And the reason for this is because once you hit level 6 you don't need health regen, but a 1v2 lane can zone you out until level 6, and you don't want to be getting denied last hits, you don't want to be getting denied experience. You want to be in there, you want to be doing your job in the lane, which is not being terrible and getting denied. It's not to say that, if you're getting denied you are terrible, it's just to say that sometimes it's a terrible thing to get denied, and sometimes it's unavoidable based on the character matchups. Now, as far as items, I go with Sork Shoes as my first purchase, and then if I'm doing reasonably well, I'm going to go with a Haunting Guise because Spell Pen is pretty ridiculous. Nobody really sees it coming, and the only people that have really good natural magic defense scaling is melee characters, because they have just inherent, +1 per level, +2 per level, or abilities that give them magic resist, just for leveling up. People like Garen and Courage. And the Sork, the Magic Pen gives you so much early game damage output that a lot of people are just going to go, wow, I thought this character was bad, and then they're going to get totally raped. And it's pretty ridiculous to see what Swain does. After that, you want to keep blue buff on you pretty much every time it's available. If your jungler's just doing like a first lap around and you have like a Shen or, no, a Mumu needs blue, but someone who doesn't need blue going through the jungle their first time around, grab it as soon as possible. Because blue on Swain is pretty much like being a superhero. Your laser chicken is out for 3 seconds and the cooldown is like 3.5 or 4 seconds. So you're pretty much raping anyone who comes anywhere near you. The damage output is pretty good from the chicken, and it's really good from your ult when you have blue on, because you could just seriously sit there and just keep it on for extended periods of time, and that gets really, really annoying if you have to play against it. But obviously you want a Z-Ring, because Z-Ring is the best caster item hands down, sort of like Infinity Edge is the best damage item hands down. But yeah, pick up a Z-Ring, and then after that you can build defensive items. That's about as good as the Swain scaling gets. If you think that you're significantly better than your opponents, then you can go with something like Soul Stealer. But you never, ever, ever pick up a Soul Stealer against a team you think is as good as you. We saw that mistake in the WCG games by the Kassadin, who bought a Soul Stealer and ran around with 0 stacks doing, nothing. So don't be that guy that goes, 0-1 or 1-1 and is like, man, this snowball item is going to do a whole lot for me because I'm going to kill everybody. Like, that's not a good decision under any condition. And I guess I still haven't really talked about his abilities, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, even though there's like a champion spotlight or whatever that does that as well. The laser chicken just does about a normal nuke's damage over time. I think it's a little lower. I think it's 255 at rank 9. But it hits 3 times and is out for 3 seconds. And it slows the target continuously as long as the chicken's out. But it's tethered to an area separate from you. So you drop the chicken and it stays tethered like inside a tower, and you could run out of the tower and it still does damage. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. And it's pretty ridiculous when it comes to kiting melee characters, because those guys kind of eat Swain's face, not to be upsetting. The ratio is pretty good on the laser chicken. I think it's like 0.7 or 0.8. It's about average caster ratio. And honestly, it's Swain's best ability, because if you look at it like this, someone like Garen is really unstoppable because Spin and Win breaks slows. But that doesn't work against the chicken, because the chicken constantly reapplies the slow. Like, if someone tries to cleanse out of chicken and they're still in range, then they get slowed again, and it's like nothing happened, and you just get to sit there and giggle to yourself because you're a little bit overpowered. Don't worry about it. Then, you get to his W. His W is a ground-targeted stun, AoE stun, that has, I think, a 2-second delay. If you ever played Dota, it's a lot like Leshrak's Earth Rupture, or whatever, it was called. It's pretty good, but the ratios are pretty bad. I think it's like 0.4 or something. And the range is, a lot smaller than, something I would expect from an ability like that. I'd actually expect the range to be a little larger, given that it is a skill shot and it's a lot harder to land than most other stuns in this game. Just saying, hint hint, nudge nudge. But yeah, so his W is pretty cool. His E is single targeted debuff, does damage over time, and it increases the damage taken by the target by 20%. And that synergizes well with his abilities, just because once they're slowed, you can pretty much do whatever you feel like. But E has the same range as Q, which means that if you have to choose between landing E and Q, you should go for Q, because a slow is more important than 1 tick of a damage over time. And it has really, really bad ratios. Like I think it's 0.5 or 0.6 or something really terrible. But if you compare it to Annie, who has, I think a zero point 0.8 and a 0.9 ratio on Q and W, and then like a 1.1 on Tibbers. I think Tibbers might actually be a 0.8. But she's got 3 good ratios. Swain has a good ratio, a bad ratio, and a mediocre ratio. So his damage output late game is what everyone's complaining about, and yeah, it's, valid complaints all the way. He doesn't scale well, because then you look at his ult, and his ult is kind of like a, people want to use it as an offensive ability, but really it's just a defensive ability, and, it's something that lets you heal while you're being attacked. He turns into a crow, and by the way, the crow, or I guess it's a raven, whatever. He turns into a bird, and the bird changes depending on, what skin you have. So I have the Northern Front Swain, my bird turns white all the time. Other Swains, their bird turns black. It's no big deal. But what it does is it sends 3 crows out around you, and it just hits 3 random targets, hits them for like 100 plus, garbage AP scaling, and it heals you for half of the amount of damage you did. So, if you're trying to one-on-one someone, fighting them inside, it's like Jax. Fighting them inside their creeps is a really, really good thing for you, because you get a bonus the more people are around you. Now, obviously, the bonus isn't like, you should run into, 3 creep waves worth of caster minions, because that's just gonna, get you murder-faced. But, if it's a one-on-one and he's got 3 creeps and he's not Jax, then you have the advantage because you're gaining a lot of life, and, you're being a boss because Swain is a boss in the laning phase. But don't use his ultimate offensive. Seriously, pay it. If you could listen to me one time ever, this is the time. Do not use his ultimate offensively unless it's a one-on-one. In a team fight, you do not compromise positioning so that you could get your ult off. All right, that's the carry's job. You need to just do your thing, sit back, control, peel kids off the carries, do some damage where you can. That's about it. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of it for Swain. He's got a lot of good buffs coming in the next patch. I don't know if I'm really allowed to talk about it, so I'm not really gonna. But as far as making him a viable caster, I think it'll do a lot towards his damage. But the thing with casters is that utility is a lot more important. And I don't know if Swain's, control 1 melee character is going to be enough utility to warrant bringing him over someone like Anivia or Annie. That remains to be seen. But the damage complaints that everyone's having about Swain this patch, gonna be gone, I guarantee it. Anyway, guys, this has been Faro with League Top 10, and I gotta say, Swain's been a lot of fun for me to play. I hope you guys don't let these tier lists just encourage the way you feel. Play what you love, and definitely have a lot of fun with Swain, because I gotta say, the best line that I've ever had in this game has been telling Travis to hold my cane while I school some kids as Swain.